The Biden administration and the public officials of New York City are in deep disagreement over immigration.
It's been a few hours since I arrived. They gave me water, some apples, and other food.
The Biden administration is considering forcing migrant families to stay in Texas during the asylum process.
Will not be another foot of wall constructed on my administration.
Mayor Adams doubling down on his executive order limiting the amount of migrant buses in the city.
The southern part of the border and coming to New York City.
And I want to talk about another top issue, the border. Now, I love how eyes turn on in Biden.
Mayors and governors from President Biden's own party are looking for help with overflowing migrant encampments, packed shelters, and busted budgets. First eviction notices. Migrant families were relocated out of a hotel located in the middle of Manhattan as part of Mayor Eric Adams' proposal to alleviate the strain on New York City's overburdened shelter system by placing a limit of 60 days on the length of time that shelter stays can be. It is anticipated that a large number of families would depart municipal shelters in the coming weeks, and the about 40 families that left Row NYC, which is located in the center of the city's theater district, are the first of many families to leave. Some of those who left quickly reapplied for beds, while others stated that they had been successful in locating more permanent housing outside of the system. Adams, who is a Democrat, set the limit in October for destitute migrant families. He stated that the decision was required to alleviate a shelter system that was being overrun by asylum seekers who were crossing the southern border of the United States. Maria Cuero, a Venezuelan woman who is 26 years old and is about 9 months pregnant, was one of the individuals who were photographed standing outside the Row Hotel in the morning. She was carrying her suitcase as well as other personal things. The Roosevelt Hotel, which is another midtown lodging establishment that is being transformed as an intake center for new migrants, was the destination that she intended to visit, according to her statement. Officials from the city have stated that there, migrant families have the opportunity to reapply for another 60-day stay in the shelter system. "We have no clue what is going to happen there," Cuero said in Spanish, as her husband, David Dominguez, grabbed their stuff for the about 20-minute walk. "It's a pretty hectic situation. For me, it causes a great deal of concern."
A living wage where they won't be exploited and then be able to set up, their lives here.
The Biden administration and the public officials of New York City are in deep disagreement over immigration.
There's a budget crisis. You've got rising inflation. Interest rates are high. Services are failing.
Humanitarian and operational challenges when it comes to housing tens of thousands of migrants and asylum seekers.
In the event that they are unable to find another city bed, the two individuals who had come in the nation 6 months ago and had been staying at the Row for 5 months stated that they do not have any friends or family members with whom they could remain. "Let's hope that we have a location that is appropriate," Dominguez continued by saying. "We know people who have been to the tents while they are pregnant." He was alluding to the temporary shelters that the city has established in Brooklyn in order to host the most recent arrivals. When a lady is pregnant, she is not allowed to be under a canvas tent. Over the course of several weeks, the administration of Adams has issued a warning that no one who is looking for a new placement is guaranteed another bed. However, Adams and the other municipal officials announced that they would give priority to families and make every effort to locate them in close proximity to the schools where their children are enrolled in order to minimize any educational disruptions that may occur. "This is not going to be a city where we are going to place children and families on the street and have them sleep on the street," Adams stated before the move-outs that were scheduled to take place on Tuesday. "I am not going to allow that to take place." Advocates for immigrants have conducted rallies in recent days, stating that the new policy could result in families waiting in long lines in the freezing cold to acquire a new shelter placement. This is the predicament that single migrant adults have been facing since the fall, when they were limited to spending a maximum of 30 days in city shelters. Advocates argue that the time constraints could also cause disruptions in the educational experience of migrant children, who may be required to switch schools if their family are relocated to a different location. Brad Lander, the city comptroller, announced that he will be initiating an investigation into the implementation of the 60-day policy by the Adams administration. The study will focus on determining whether or not the policy was adequately described to families and the expenditures that it ultimately incurred. In reality, what kind of information is being made available to individuals? He asked the question outside of the Row Hotel as people were checking out. Are there any protocols for the 60-day evictions? Approximately 4,800 notices of eviction have been delivered to families of migrants who are now residing in shelters. According to Mayra Martinez, a mother from Colombia who is 40 years old, her 3 children have conflicting emotions on their departure from the Row. For more than a year, the family has been residing at the hotel, and they had accumulated sufficient funds to rent a 3-bedroom flat in Newark, New Jersey, which is located neighboring the hotel.
Migrants don't want to be in shelter for the rest of their lives. They're here just for get a little bit opportunity to get out.
It's been a few hours since I arrived. They gave me water, some apples, and other food.
You'll have a room to sleep in. You won't sleep in the street. Yet the line doesn't move at all. So I don't know how long we'll be here.
Asylum seekers were forced to sleep on the street and on buses after a hotel being used as shelter reached capacity.
During the time that Martinez and her husband were loading their luggage into a waiting rideshare, Martinez made the following statement in Spanish. They like it here, but you can't cook in the hotel, and they miss home-cooked food. As a result of their school, they are also experiencing some sadness. They will have to transition to a new school and become accustomed to it. The hotel evictions took place at the same time as municipal officials temporarily removed over 2,000 migrants who were staying at Floyd Bennett Field, which was formerly an airfield in Brooklyn, in preparation for a storm that may potentially cause damage. The administration of Adams had constructed the temporary shelter near the airfield as a reaction to the influx of new refugees that were arriving in the city. According to a statement released by Kayla Mamalak, a spokesperson for Adams, to be clear, this relocation is a proactive measure being taken out of an abundance of caution to ensure the safety and well-being of individuals working and living at the center, Mamalak said. The relocation will continue until any weather conditions that may arise have stabilized and the facility is once again fit for living, the statement reads. Residents, the majority of whom were families with children, were transferred to James Madison High School, which is located in the neighborhood of Brooklyn.
To pivot and shift and be prepared to send the right message to these bus operators.
That they are at a breaking point. I mean, how much more can not just New Yorkers, but Americans who are seeing this
Administration to grant migrants in the city and other places legal status so they can apply for work.
A leader of a city like New York should be using divisive language that's going to be putting a target on the
city officials to improve information gathering on the migrants they have in their custody at these shelters.
And so if anyone that states bringing 70,000 people to a city.
Republicans push impeachment. While Republicans in the U.S. are working to make immigration a big issue in the presidential election that will take place in November, they announced that they will be initiating impeachment procedures against Joe Biden's Homeland Security chief over the worsening border situation. As of late, up to 10,000 migrants have been imprisoned each day after crossing illegally from Mexico. This situation, which Republicans have referred to as a humanitarian calamity, has occurred despite the fact that the White House and lawmakers have been unable to reach a consensus on policies that would reduce the influx of migrants. Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, was the subject of an investigation that led to the conclusion of the investigation in December. Republicans in Congress have accused Mayorkas of causing a national security emergency by neglecting immigration policy. Despite the fact that there is no scheduled vote on impeachment, the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, Mark Green, has stated that an initial hearing will take place the following Wednesday. Our investigation made it abundantly clear that this crisis has its roots in the decisions that Secretary Mayorkas has made and his refusal to enforce the laws that have been passed in Congress, he added. The fact that he has failed to fulfill his oath of office calls for accountability. It would be necessary for a majority of the House to vote that Mayorkas had committed high crimes and misdemeanors, which would then result in a trial in the Senate, which would result in his removal from office if 2/3 of senators gave their consent to convict him. However, given that 51 of the 100 members in the upper house are Democrats, this is considered to be an extremely unlikely occurrence. There is a consensus among the fractious members of the Republican Party regarding the border issue. Nevertheless, even in the House of Representatives, it may still be difficult to obtain the votes necessary to impeach the president, as the Republican majority has shrunk to just 2 votes. Speaker Mike Johnson made an effort to energize the rank and file by taking approximately 60 members to the frontier hamlet of Eagle Pass, Texas. While there, they saw a Border Patrol facility and had conversations with locals. The administration has done very little to safeguard the border since President Biden took office. This is a very concerning situation. According to Johnson, who was speaking to reporters, but we have all seen with our own eyes that they have opened the border wide to the entire world. It is believed that people from almost 170 different countries are crossing this border and entering a variety of countries.
In today for David Navarro, adding to the desperation, many migrants say they don't have water or access to restrooms.
To get them to reappropriate, to redirect that money. They didn't. They wouldn't.
Evidence of the shelter shortage. You can see it with the lines that are growing each day of mostly men waiting hours in some.
The Biden administration is considering forcing migrant families to stay in Texas during the asylum process.
Will not be another foot of wall constructed on my administration.
To provide shelter to anyone who requests it. But the Legal Aid Society says it is considering filing litigation.
Border security requires a smarter and more comprehensive approach.
It is important to note that these individuals are not those who are attempting to escape their home countries and seeking refuge because they are afraid for their life there. In an election year, the hearings will be a source of frustration for President Joe Biden, who is facing his own impeachment investigation conducted by Republicans due to charges of corruption that are not supported by evidence, and whose low approval ratings related to immigration are among his most significant flaws. In a poll conducted by Harvard Capps Harris in December, only 38% of registered voters indicated that they approved of the Democratic president's approach to immigration. This figure represents a decrease from 46%, who expressed approval 1 month earlier. A monthly record of 302,000 migrants were confronted by authorities after illegally crossing the border in December, according to agents at the border who made the announcement. In Eagle Pass, Johnson made a request to President Biden to bring back the Remain in Mexico policy, which was implemented during the Trump administration and was intended to keep asylum applicants out of the U.S. until their court appearances. Johnson suggested that this policy would reduce illegal entries by 70%. The Democratic National Committee has accused Republicans of obstructing efforts to increase border patrols and reach an agreement on immigration. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security has referred to the impeachment drive as a baseless political exercise. The announcement was made by Mayorkas at a time when the White House and senators from both parties were engaged in discussions regarding border security and asylum reforms. The Republicans stipulated that the adoption of an immigration package was a prerequisite for providing assistance to the war-torn Ukraine. The primary focus of the negotiations has been on enhancing the regulations governing asylum seekers and broadening the scope of accelerated removals. Both parties are hoping to have a plan ready to be distributed by the following week. He has stated that he will not settle for anything less than the hardline border and immigration policy that was enacted by Republicans in the House of Representatives the previous year, which was a non-starter in the Senate. Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, is a conservative Republican who has attempted to push the immigration debate to a national level by sending thousands of migrants to towns in the north that are headed by Democrats. Biden has been put under extensive pressure to take immediate action by the mayors of New York, Denver, and Chicago. In addition, Abbott signed a law last month that would give state police the authority to arrest and deport migrants who enter the U.S. illegally from Mexico. It was that the Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against the state of Texas, alleging that the bill that is often referred to as SB 4 violates the Constitution and that the right to regulate immigration is solely given to the federal government. Challenges and controversies. Our mayor lives in a shanty town. The mayor, Eric Adams' administration, and members of the city council are being criticized by immigration advocates and Lord City Council for enforcing a policy that forcibly removes migrant families with children. We also want to make it clear to the thousands of incoming migrants and asylum seekers what is expected of them. The majority of those residing there aspire to pursue the American dream, but there is a small minority that we want to make clear cannot enter our systems and cause disruptions. In the neighborhoods, over 80% of New Yorkers say the recent influx of migrants is a serious problem. When the Democrats first opened the gates to the migrants, they pitched wedding tents filled with recliners and popcorn machines. Sanctuary city leaders boasted about how many illegal immigrants they had allowed in to protect immigrants during the COVID-19 pandemic. While they provided a service to the city, many people think we should keep ensuring that this is a sanctuary city. However, house guests can only stay for so long before becoming a nuisance because the migrants are now causing trouble in the communities that were forced to accept them. Dozens of migrants are refusing to leave this Midtown hotel. In Manhattan, a man from Venezuela expresses his fatigue and coldness, questioning whether this is the harsh reality of the American dream. Officials inform us that resources in public hospitals in New York City are overwhelmed, citing nearly 30,000 visits from migrants over the past year and 300 new babies born to these mothers. Staff at Bellevue Hospital tells us they are eager to assist, but the numbers are tough. This has been the hardest work I've ever done, but it's been the most impactful work I've ever done.
Media very quiet about this, but the Biden administration has made absolutely no to show you this is not unplanned. This is not unintentional.
The majority of visits to the taxpayer-funded legal clinic here are from migrants. The clinics are full, there are waiting lists, and people are turning people away or referring them to other locations. If you ask me, do we need more resources for legal services? Randy Redkin from New York's Legal Assistance Group says that a lot of migrants are requesting legal help on asylum representation and health care access. She claims that American citizens who need legal assistance with issues like eviction and insurance have to wait up to 10 weeks. The decision made by the city to use the school where their children were enrolled to shelter migrants who had to be removed from Floyd Bennett Field was met with outrage by the parents of Brooklyn residents. The events that took place at Madison High School last night serve as a shining example of what should not be done. These students and their families were punished for Joe Biden's incompetence to ensure the safety of the border. The fact that the schools are required to accommodate migrants while simultaneously canceling courses for pupils who are expected to go each and every day and study is inexcusable. Many people are of the opinion that this cannot be maintained, that it is intolerable, and that they are going to have to dedicate billions of dollars to addressing this situation.
And I want to talk about another top issue, the border. Now, I love how eyes turn on in Biden.
He's ever seen.
Thousands of more asylum seekers arriving here, waiting for a place to sleep and a fresh start tonight.
Over and over, I've asked for resources to step up action at the border. In October, I asked Congress to fund
The Biden administration could be considering everything from making sure that the migrants are protected when they do go to work and not exploited.
Senators to negotiate a deal, including border. Because I believe we need significant...
To sleep out here, they were each given a ticket with a number on it to mark their spot in line for intake.
Migrant families who are being evicted from local shelters after 60 days, specifically Steve and Teresa, as everyone is aware. It has been extremely cold here, and for the past almost 2 weeks, this new policy, which evicts migrant families with children after 60 days, has been in effect. This policy has been in effect because of the cold weather. The Roosevelt Hotel has been serving as both a reception center for newly arrived migrants and a reticketing center for migrant families who have received notices of eviction. There is a shanty town where the mayor resides. In response to the implementation of a program that evicts immigrant families with children after 60 days if they are unable to locate alternative accommodation within that time frame, Mayor Eric Adams and his administration have come under fire from members of the Lord City Council as well as immigration groups. Meanwhile, a policy that is very similar to this one has been in effect for a number of months for immigrants who are single adults. In response to the most recent policy move that has an impact on migrant families with children, the Speaker of the City Council is one of the individuals who are opposed to the mayor. I implore the mayor to give up on this ineffective and harsh strategy and seek more sensible management measures instead. Within the past week, the government made a revision to this policy, which resulted in the postponement of the issuance of eviction notices for pregnant immigrants who were in their third trimester and women who had recently given birth. As a response to the event, the Adams administration made the announcement that they were forced to make these significant policy changes because they were running out of space and resources to care for such a large number of migrants. Further, they demanded that the federal government find a solution to the problem. You will be 6 months old. More than 170,000 refugees have received medical attention since the spring of 2022, and the city is now building accommodations for 68,000 migrants.
Mayor Adams doubling down on his executive order limiting the amount of migrant buses in the city.
He is preparing for possibly getting 50 to 100 migrants here in the city each day.
Saturday, the mayor of Edison now says he's chartering his own buses to send them right back.
Over the globe have made their minds up that they're going to come through the southern part of the border and come into New York City.
Immigration policies in New York City. Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala disagreed with the mayor, saying, "I don't think the mayor is being honest." In meetings, she revealed being told that one of the goals of the strategy is to make people uncomfortable enough. Advocates further assert that children being moved between shelters disrupts their education, with some children forced to switch schools and not receiving the full support that the administration claims to provide. Staff at the shelters claim that due to frequent moves, they had to return important documents that had changed their lives back to the sender. Now, over 80% of New Yorkers believe that the latest migrant inflow is a severe problem, according to a recent Siena College poll released this morning. What they're doing is ringing doorbells. They rang my girlfriend's doorbell, and when she answered, they stuck a government-paid phone right in her face. It was pre-programmed in English, and it said, "Can I have some money?" She turned it away. There were 2 small children with them. They went into Marine Park at night during the Christmas holidays, and the neighbors were alarmed because they were coming in through the side doors, ringing doorbells, and requesting food. Just this week, they stole a woman's laundry in front of her house.
New York City and
New
what's happening
York
there?
City. Well, they are just extending their contract with local hotels. Years. He says the city's already at breaking point. They're putting up 50,000 more immigrants from rolling into town. This was taken just last week.
Since they were receiving free Metro cards, they took the bus into Kings Plaza to the shopping center, where they were robbing stores and panhandling in the middle of it. We feel bad for anyone who can't afford to put food on the table for their young children or forego a warm coat in the winter, but this is enough. We have enough panhandlers who are citizens of the U.S. We have enough thieves as it is. Obviously, this city is full. There are no jobs available. 1,700 migrants are in the Floyd Bendit fields. They have nowhere to go. They are freezing to death. The children aren't receiving an education. It's a horrifying situation, and it's only going to get worse. Do you think that by giving them any money, or does that just encourage more? No, that is not significant. They're not going to stop doing what they're doing. In fact, it seems like there will never be an end to this issue. It's funny that he went to a Democratic mayor who went to a Democratic president 10 times and showed the door 10 times. And I don't think you can hold Mayor Eric Adams responsible. He's simply managing the wave that Biden led in. Well, this seems like President Joe Biden is under a lot of pressure too, considering all this situation. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.